Kia ora and welcome to Constellations and All That. I'm your host, Tracy Cartwright, and together we will be exploring the world of family constellations with facilitators and clients from around the world, looking at different perspectives and experiences in the work, having a cup of tea and just chatting with some friends around their experiences in constellations. We'd love for you to join us. I hope that you enjoy this series as much as I have loved making it. Kia ora, everyone. Welcome to this episode of Constellations and All That. Today I have the pleasure of sharing these moments with Jonine Lee Gabay. Is it Gabay or Gabby?
Gabay.
Gabay,
Which means is Jewish for keeper of the temple. My husband's name. Yeah, Lee's my family name.
Beautiful. Well,
Yeah.
welcome. So, Jonine, I generally don't introduce you in a way that most podcast hosts would introduce someone. I allow my guests to share anything that they want to share about themselves for the viewers and the listeners, so that this is a little bit of a who am I moment. So I'll hand it over to you.
Oh, who am I? Well, I'm the daughter of Aileen McGinley and Thomas Patrick Lee. I'm the second eldest in a family of 9, 10 actually, one miscarriage. The eldest daughter, which is kind of like eldest. I always knew when there was another one coming along because my mother would move her clothes from one end, the big clothes from one end of the wardrobe to the other, and I'd be like, there's another one coming along. Who am I? And now I'm a mother. I'm also a mother, a wife, a stepmother, a grandmother, a step-grandmother. I've been married 3 times, so I have fabulous stepchildren in my life from both 2 previous marriages and my current. So we've got quite a hodgepodge of grandchildren. I think 10, probably 10 grandchildren. And who I am also is someone passionate. I get a bit lost in that. I think we can get a bit trancy in who am I? Who am I in the moment? So I'm lots of things, but who I am in the moment is a woman about to turn, who's a wife, a mother, a daughter, a grandmother, a sister. I've got 4 fabulous sisters and 4 fabulous brothers, 2 living and 2 not, eldest and youngest in the family of 9. Died, one was killed, one died. But who I am in the moment is a woman about to turn 70, Tracy. And I have never been, 70 in August, 2nd of August. Just in case you want to send me a greeting. And I don't think I've ever been more passionate about systemic constellations, the passionate work that I get to live every day and have done for nearly 30 years. I'll talk a little about my first introduction. But turning 70, I feel like I'm just hitting my strides around creativity. I feel like I've got the confidence and courage now that my younger selves help to cultivate and take risks and be a bit of a rebel around. And I'm really excited about the next, 2, 3, who knows what the future holds, 4 decades or whatever life has for me. But I'm listening to its call, and there are so many movements that I can't not follow, which make it really easy to wake up every day and just go, what am I going to do today? What do I want to take care of? What do I creatively want to work on? Who do I want to connect with? And so that's who I am mostly in this present moment. I'm a nearly 70-year-old woman who my younger self, every now, I spent many, many years working with inner child stuff. And so the little girl in me, the voice is always saying, yay, you're fantastic. I'm so glad you grew up to who I always hoped you might be. So that's me now, Tracy. And here I am talking to you and talking to lots of people around the world because of the community that we've created.
Yeah, absolutely.
Through Family Constellations. It's just extraordinary. I mean, I think we met probably 15 or longer years ago at one of the first Australasian Constellation Intensives, and yay to our New Zealand sisters with you at the masthead New Zealand Intensives, which you've got your second one coming up next month.
April. April. Yeah.
So exciting. So I'm just grateful to be part of this age and stage of my life, to be connected to an international community of people that really want to make a difference. They're committed to making a difference. And at some stage, I'd love to talk to you about the international training, because there are just so many new, young, keen facilitators wanting to learn the skills that the world has never needed more than ever now. Those of conflict
Absolutely.
resolution, creating harmonious relationships, accepting and inviting in everyone that belongs. Yeah, so that's who I am right now. Xmas.
Oh, you've got so much passion and so much energy. And I just can't believe that you're going to be 70.
I
No
know.
way.
I
Like,
know, it's such a privilege. Oh my God, it's such a
stunning,
privilege.
stunning, stunning. If you are not watching this on YouTube or a device that you can see the video, Jonine is just a beautifully stunning woman and she's turning 17. You wouldn't ever have guessed it. So, wow.
And it's a privilege. And a lot of people say, oh, it's not, I don't want to say my age. I am so excited to say I'm 70. I work with so many younger women, and it behooves us as this generation in the third age. I mean, you're still a young bunny, to really talk about, the experience, what they can expect, what the potential of what they can expect if they put the effort and energy and courage in now to intentionally set a vision for themselves to have that created in their lives. But it's a privilege. Some of my dearest, most beloved friends and family members didn't get to be this age.
Yes, absolutely.
So I'm really grateful for every day as a gift. Every day is a bloody
I
gift.
remember when my mum was even in her late 60s and then going into her 70s, she was old. She kept saying, I'm old. I'm old. And she really believed it. And so she lived that as well. And
The mindset,
she
isn't
was
it?
pretty spunky too in her way, but also
Yeah.
she had that mindset of being old. So, well, you are what you tell yourself too, aren't you? So,
Yeah, mindset's everything. And self-talk. Look, I love that you talk about self-talk, like I really love that that's been a really core focus of my own process, especially doing nearly 16 years of inner child workshops and having studied and been gifted to being part of the logistics that brought John Bradshaw to Australia. First time he really worked
mm,
out of the US, who was kind of in his day a Hellinger. He was really an extraordinary communicator and really a visionary, and made such a difference. I mean, in Australia and worldwide, he had audiences of 3,000 and 5,000 people. He
wow.
talked about inner child work, the importance of that. And he also talked about non-shaming therapeutic models, which I was coordinator of that training in Australia ongoingly for a number of years with his clinical director, Kip Flock, and healing the shame. So he was an early person, also out of Texas, interestingly, which is where Brene Brown's out of. Bradshaw was out of Texas, and one of his seminal works is Healing the Shame That Binds.
What was his name? John Bradshaw.
John Bradshaw. Yeah, he's dead
Yeah.
now. Yeah, but he would have been probably over 100 or something. But he too, a bit like Hellinger, they're two of my hoodoo gurus. Yeah, that's still their work. And Healing the Shame That Binds and Creating Love are two brilliant, brilliant books. I really want to talk about Hellinger too, because that's the teaching and training. But Healing the Shame That Binds is a must read for every human being, because I think unless we understand the shame binds that we have around body, voice, intellect, learning. A really big passion I have with the international training is that we set up a model for learning that allows for maximum support and encouragement, because so many of us have had shame around healing. We do
Mm.
that whole comparison thing, or I'm not smart enough or clever enough, and it just binds our human potential.
Absolutely. And I just think about the when you have that wounded part of yourself, and if you're a wounded healer or you're a wounded, there's a wound that's driving the bus, right? Often the shame overwhelms the desire to step out and be seen to be healing, because sometimes people want it, just got to do it myself. I've got to do it myself. And if I'm seen to step to someone else, there's a bit of shame that comes up.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Absolutely. That's my story. There's no question. And I think John Bradshaw says somewhere or other, shame-based people have to read everything and know everything about what's required before they'll step out. And because the need to know is a massive defense mechanism. It's like I have to know in order that I won't be seen as less than because I don't know.
yeah.
And that was certainly my early story around healing, shame around learning and speaking up. And I still think that's one of the strongest shame binds that we have, Tracy, the terror that we have about speaking up and fully being seen and expressing our views, because the terror is, well, people see it and it's like, oh, that's not very smart, or that's not very clever, or, who are they to say such a thing or do such a thing?
Yeah.
And I think the greatest loss of potential and energy on the planet really is the shame binds that humanity lives with. If we actually cleared that up, but human potential is so much of the human potential is trapped because of shame binds. There's no question.
Yeah, and people use it too, don't they? They use it on others to shame others, to
Keep them
quash
in their
them
box,
from
squash them.
being their true authentic selves, and to
Yeah.
be keep
Yeah,
them
my
in the keep
story
them
and my
down.
family history is definitely about don't speak up. And so even though, and we've known one another for a long time, even though all my life I would be seen as quite verbose, like not slow in coming forward and speaking up, speaking a deeper truth or a more authentic truth has been the challenge. And so for me, that's definitely been my journey. It's like, yeah, I can talk la la la, but it's like the journey for me is to have developed the courage to really speak up a deeper truth and just to be seen and heard and accepted or not accepted. There's that lovely, I'm not everybody's cup of tea, but I'm a few people's tequila or something like that. I think that fits for all of us. We're not everybody's cup of tea.
Exactly.
And if we shape shift ourselves into putting all that effort and energy into being who we think others want us to be, then they always get that it's not the real gig anyway. So it's a waste
Yeah.
of time.
Yeah.
There's a lovely little quote I used to give out in the child workshops about, if I'm an apple and I pretend to try to be a banana because people like bananas, then even if I do that, I'll be a second-rate banana because I'm really an apple, and something like that it goes on about. So
I love
anyway,
it. I love
yeah.
it. Yeah, the voice, eh? So tell me, Jonine, how did you get into constellations? This is one
Oh
of my favorite
boy.
questions.
Yes, it's a lovely question, isn't it? Yeah. I went to a breathwork conference actually because I'm a counselor and NLP practitioner and also a breathwork practitioner. And so I went to a conference and there was a lot of people there. At this stage, I'd also been doing a lot of psychodrama and sand play and inner child work and family systems work. So I went to this breathwork conference and my colleague had just come back from Germany and Poland. And she said, oh, there's this new modality that's really blooming in Poland and in Germany. And she said, it's, about family systems. And I was sort of kind of like in my arrogance saying, oh, I so know that. I've been working for 10 years, family systems in a chamber. I so know that. And anyway, she said, who'd like to do a piece? And of course, it was a big conference. So I thought, great, I'm from a big family. I'll put my hand up. So I set up my 9 siblings. And I set up my siblings and my parents. And then I sat down and remembering, I said, oh, I so know this. Then she said to sit down. So set up yourself and then sit down. So I sat down and my whole body immediately. And this is me telling this story nearly 29 years later. My whole body just absolutely did this, only on a more enhanced level.
Yeah.
And I said, oh my God, I've left someone out. And my colleague, we've always had a bit of an adversary, or we had always had a bit of it. She always saw me as a bit of a drama queen, which, to be honest, I probably was back there. And she said, it's no trouble, Jonine. If you've left someone out, we'll just put them in. And I said, no, you don't understand. I've left someone really important out. And I won't go into that story because I definitely will have to. And anyway, so she said, put the person in. And this is someone that was really extraordinarily important, one of my siblings that was extraordinarily important, not just, so I had left her out. But what that indicated, and what you and all of us that work with constellations have experienced, is the extraordinary split between the conscious and unconscious mind. That on the conscious level, I would have thought before going into that process, a bit like the, oh, I so know this process, the arrogance of, I totally felt that I had this particular dynamic cosmically sorted. Like I was the guru goddessness of, this has a place in my heart. I'm in a good, accepting and belonging place of this. And yet within seconds of setting up my constellation. Nothing could have been further from the truth. Nothing.
Yep.
Not only was that person not in there, they just weren't included. Anyway, so the process was pretty profound. It was like, really, I knew exactly what was happening. It was like, wow, I could witness myself. And that's the beauty, I think, ongoingly for me of constellations, is the beauty of realizing, humbling. We come into that humility of realizing this is what happened. And unless I make peace with what happened, what is, and if I hadn't in that moment, the processional effect for so many people would have been so different. But most profoundly for myself and this person and everybody else involved. And so it changed the direction of my life completely and utterly. I mean, I was actually, to go a little bit further into what happened in the process, just to tell you just how big a split it was from me being the cosmic guru, I'm in acceptance of this. I had to have 3 people hold me up by the arms.
Wow.
To say the healing sentence, because I was completely aware this was the truth and I wanted to want to say it. And there was a part of me that did not want to say it because it meant that I was less than, I wasn't okay, or I wasn't important, or whatever story there was there. But I literally, so my colleague from Poland said, this is the sentence you need to say. And I actually said, yeah, a lot of things like, no, you could cut me open, slash my wrist, I can't say those words, I'll die. And I was really in that. And anyway, so then finally, obviously, and she said, well, you can say you want to say that. And I said, well, that's definitely true. I know that's what's needed, and that's what is true. And so stepping through that healing sentence, Tracy, was profound. And it all would have happened in 5 or 10 minutes. But so much emerged as a consequence of being guided into that, my beautiful adversarial colleague from Poland. And so from the very next day, so I had been a practitioner, a breathwork, a holistic counselor, NLP. I'd done many, many years of studying with the best in NLP and breathwork. And the very next day, I just knew that I will never, ever, ever do a session without incorporating the essential principles of family constellations and making space available. Because what that did, and as you know beautifully, what Constellation does, whether it's in a group, which is very, very powerful, and I support group work everywhere, having been a practitioner for over 30 years, group work, it's like wherever, and as soon as you can, get into a group dynamic that has safe guidelines, because so much healing happens in a group dynamic. But whether you do it in a group or individually, the opportunity it affords, doesn't it, that for us to be able to externalize the internal picture we have of our family system, of who belongs and who doesn't. And it gives us the opportunity spatially to really experience the interconnectedness or the lack of connection, or, how we place ourselves in relation either to our internal family system, which I love working with as well, or our external family system, or our relationship with humanity and other elements. And that was a profound experience of that. And I thought, this is what people need to get. I mean, NLP, and I've studied with some of the best, Robert Dilts, Robert McDonald, Michael Hall. It talks about, the map is not the territory. We have the capacity to perceive whatever our internal filter is set up to perceive. So, but Constellations really helps us, and the philosophy helps us to look at what happened, and because then we've got all these interpretations around it that we can sort out, some that are helpful and many, many, many that are not helpful. But it wasn't helpful for me, to have that, hold that space of, like believing I included, but actually excluding. And so imagine that split energy for the rest of my life. And as we talked about before we came on screen, the amount of energy, of life force energy that has to go into suppressing knowing that truth or being with that truth. And I think it's the greatest loss of human potential on the planet, that unresolved, unintegrated, suppressed responses to past events. Because it's not past events, as we all know, that are harming us. They're gone, they're done, they happened. It's not that the past holds us hostage. Can't remember, you might remember who said this, but we hold the past hostage. We hold it within ourselves, fearful to face it. And yet it's like it's already done. It's accepting what is. Thank God for Hellinger, and really, and his principles, of course, he stands on the shoulders, Tracy, as we know, of
Different.
many trainers, many family systems therapists before him. He stands on those shoulders, but a bit like Bradshaw did, he communicated them in a way and he wove them together. I often say family constellations is kind of like weaving, Hellinger wove a golden thread between these core essential principles, these time-honored Lao-Tzu. There are more ancient philosophers that spoke of exactly the same things, and he wove those together and presented us with something magnificent that really supports the healing and
Yeah,
integration of trauma.
absolutely. For myself, my first experience, I sitting in the hot seat after my constellation, and I could hear very clearly this voice saying, "This is what you've been waiting for. This is what you're here to do. You know how this all works." And I'm going, "Do I? Oh, okay." So as I'm integrating this beautiful constellation that had just happened, and then I'm being told, given this message. So it was like, okay, within a week, I was looking for a trainer, and yeah, and we
That
only
was
had one in the country at the time. So
the rest was history. That's it.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
I'm just grateful every day. Like, I'm just so grateful every day. I wake up, I get to be me. I don't have to be anything else. Just get to be me all day. I work with people that are committed to, changing the planet, contributing to changes on the planet. And then I go to sleep and I wake up the next day and do the whole same thing again. It's like,
right.
it's a really good gig. And all that energy I used to put into being who I thought I ought to be, and most of it was imaginary anyway.
Yeah,
I was just trying to double guess. I can put into my creative passions. And so, yeah, that which is a blessing. And that's evolved. So, you say who I am. So I immediately afterwards, I knew that this is what I had to integrate into my work. And so I loved Sit and Symmetry at the time, wasn't in English. So my German and Polish colleagues, we translated it, began to work with the principles and practice amongst ourselves. And then as time happened, the internet happened after a time, and so exposure to other trainers. And now I think there are very few that I haven't trained with, and most of them, certainly the first and second generation trainers, thanks to the great interrupter COVID and the generation of the international conference, which then led to the international training, which I could only have dreamt about in my wildest
yeah.
dreams. There's a new facilitator.
You do amazing things in the world there, Janine.
Yeah.
Can you tell the listeners and the viewers a bit more about that?
Yeah, well, when COVID happened, so myself, initially a vision for Australasia because we're so far away from the German trainers and so forth. Chris Walsh, who was an early champion of constellations in Australia, as was Maria Dolan's and others. We got, with Chris Walsh's initiative, brought the first intensive to Australia, and then Maria and others and I continued it on, and then they let go and I continued it on. But by the time COVID happened, we were actually weeks away from I think the sixth Australasian intensive, where we brought overseas trainers to Australia to upskill students of the work. And it was shut down. And I was like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? Because most of the senior trainers that we had been bringing out to Australia were getting close to retirement. They were in their 70s, mid 70s and so forth. And I thought, this is a disaster. I'm really passionate about mentoring the next generation of facilitators.
Yeah.
So anyway, I thought, well, if we can do it in person, if we can have a main meeting room and 4 breakout rooms where you choose different workshops, which is what, as you know, you guys do in New Zealand and we do in Australia, then we can do it online. If we can do it in person, we can do it online. Just need to find the person to do that with. God bless Maggie Sisson. So I went about bringing it online. And so we went from having like 12 or 15 trainers in Australia, the Australasian intensive, and 150, 180 participants, to having 91 trainers, 91 facilitators, including the elders, who all said, what? Online? Really? Over 7 days? Really? 4 rooms? 91 presenters, 4 Zoom rooms running concurrently 24 hours a day for 7 days. And the first conference was about 350 participants. The next year was over 120 facilitators and over 3,500 participants or something like that. So it was amazing. And everybody, of course, loved it. Just being able to sit in the circle, press a button and sit in the circle and have the experience of being with
Absolutely.
the elders, but not just the elders, of course, as you know. Already there are so many young and vibrant and innovative constellators contributing, but being with the elders is something unique, those closest to Hellinger.
It really opened it up, didn't it? Like,
Oh, it
you know,
just opened,
I'm
it was
very grateful
wild.
for that. I
I'm
got to be,
really
I was a
grateful.
presenter for you on that, on
Yes, you
those
were.
at one
And on
point.
Worldwide Constellation Day. Yeah.
Yeah,
And you
and
would, and you reached people all over so many different countries.
exactly. And I got to experience facilitators that I would never have had
Yeah.
the opportunity to experience. So,
No,
so
and the
grateful
cost,
for that.
especially for us in Australia and New Zealand, was prohibitive. I know, and I had young children still, and the cost when when I was early facilitator, it was really, unless they came out here, it was very difficult for me to do.
Mhm.
Especially the elders sort of said, well, we were a bit hesitant. I can remember having several conversations with Bertolt and Snay and saying, well, I was a bit hesitant about this whole thing, online and stuff, but it was marvelous. I had a wonderful time. All
Yeah,
these people from all around the world were really keen and they wanted to know what I knew, and it was just marvelous. And I said, well, what about, training online? And I had a lot of really in-depth conversations, particularly with Bertolt, because I think Bertolt Ulsima, if you haven't read his books, please do.
yeah.
Everything he says, everything he shares, he simplifies and unpacks and presents it in such a potent and unique way. And so he was really a go-to person to discuss the international training with. And he said, oh, I don't know, really, it'd have to be non-linear because those of us most experienced, we're not going to really want to teach Constellations 101. We're going to really want to present it with our unique expression, blah, blah. Anyway, we had lots of conversations. And he said, well, I did actually contribute to a smaller collaborative training at once. And he said, it wasn't great. Anyway, he said, Jonine, you've done 2 international conferences. You and your team did a great job. Let's see what happens. And I said, let's see what happens. Anyway, now every month that after a 2-day training unit, I often get an email from Bertolt. Thank you, Bertolt, to say, oh, Johnny, and I'm so glad we did this. I'm so glad we did this. I
Yeah.
really love doing this, as all of the trainers, Snay and Marianne and Judith Hemming, all who are a little bit hesitant about it. But now the fact that they can sit with all their wisdom in their own living room, they press a button and a tech host welcomes them in, checks their sound, and then they open the doors and they get to teach these incredibly curious and keen students from all around the world. Last year we had a large proportion from Russia, Belarus and Ukraine, which is very exciting, and we had translation for that, and we've got that because the training starts again in March, and they just love it. So they just sit there and they teach and they get appreciated and ask questions, and then they press the button and then they go and have a cup of tea or a scotch or whatever and, show up the following month. They don't have to hold the space, which is
Yeah.
what they don't want to do. So
And the
students, in
big
the
travel
meantime,
and stuff like that
they don't
too.
have to
People
travel.
getting older.
Exactly. Yeah,
Mm.
but they still get to do what they really love, but just once a month or once every 2 months. And in between the 2-day training sessions, which are across 16 hours each day, so it's 2 days a month, and it runs from European 1 a.m. to European 9 p.m. So it's 16 hours of teaching
It's
each day.
amazing. It's amazing.
5 sessions each day. So that's 10 sessions and 10 different trainers. It's
And
extraordinary.
you're recording them too, aren't you? So they
All
get
recorded so you can
live
review.
access.
It's extraordinary. Yeah. And in between time, the study groups, there's a WhatsApp chat group for the study groups. And so all these people from all around the world get together and say, oh, who wants to practice such and such? Who wants to practice such and such? And many students of Constellations, as you know, Tracy, have trained with one trainer and in person, and that is stupendous. Nothing replaces the beauty of that. But to be able to train with such diversity, like you get the opportunity to go, there's that way of approaching it. And Shavasti has that way. Oh, and Gita has that. Oh, and Judith Hemming has. So it gives people have expressed that it gives them a lot of freedom to express their own unique, to trust that as well. Yeah, it's just beautiful. It's absolutely stunning. The community that develops, the support that each give one another, the
Mm.
way we set it up so that there's no shaming around learning, that people can take their time, do it at their own pace, ask for support. It's really something just so grateful to be engaged in. And despite the fact that I've done so much training over the years, I'm still learning. And many of those that attend do it for ongoing professional development. They've done lots of trainings. Many of them are trainers themselves or group leaders, and they come to the training because they can do it at their own pace. And they're learning from many of the trainers that they might not have experienced, or they're getting their new work. It's like, oh, okay. So a couple of particular trainers that come to the training, it's like, I attend the training as a student, and then the following weekend or the following month, I'm giving my sessions and I'm quoting Bert or Judith or whomever and sharing what their latest approach to their work is. So I could go on. You have to pause me on that because, yeah, I'm very.
Oh, there's so much passion in it, and it's just so valuable, so much, so grateful that for what you are bringing through, Jonine, your
Yeah.
vision and your passion and your energy for it all. And there's something that's always curious because I haven't experienced this, and so how do you combine your breath work
Yeah.
with constellations? What does that look like
Mm. Mm.
in a session?
Oh, yes, they love one another. Breathwork and family constellations just absolutely love one another. Because, well, when you think about it, of course, the breath is our most valuable tool and process for accessing what's been suppressed. So the way I combine it is it's always having someone that is either choosing to do their piece of work and or those that are represented to be very conscious of their breath, because
Okay.
the breath is the great bridge between the conscious and unconscious mind, between the mind and the body. So when someone's, of course, the key mechanism that we have used to suppress uncomfortable somatic material, our feelings and emotional responses to events, is our breath. So it
Mm,
makes sense, we hold our breath in, and most of us are chronic breath inhibitors, something like that, whatever the correct terminology for that is. Let's be creative with language, is our breath. And so it
yeah.
makes sense. So people say, oh, where do you get your energy and passion from? As I've used my breath and my body and my heart and constellations to
Mm.
clear what's in the way of me being able to access my most creative, vital energy. It's just constantly been a process, and I do it ongoingly. So a session might be, Tracy, that I'll have someone come, there's an issue that they want to work with, and in my practice room, and whether it's a workshop, I don't do those so much because I'm so involved in the training, but they'll bring something that's present in their lives that they'd like to change or feel differently about or create something new. And so we might set up a little constellation. So I'll use mats or dolls or objects. I did many, many years of sand play before constellations. So, I invite people to choose an object. And so they'll spatially set up. So I'll say, okay, if you externalize that internal image of what's happening, what are the dynamics happening either in your family, your relationship, your work setup, might be a symptom, might be a health issue. And so we'll work a little bit with that in the traditional way of constellations. I invite them to stand as if in the position of those people, parts, aspects, elements, and notice what's available to them in that moment. And then I generally end a session, so we'll get some clarity from that, and I'll generally then have a session where it's like invite them to lie down and connect up their breathing and just drop a little deeper. So it's like all that spaciousness has opened up because of the constellation. All those new perspectives have been made available to them. And so it's like, wow. So then lying down on a beautiful mat and just breathing consciously and taking that from mind to muscle, taking it from head to heart, just whole body integration of that is just stunning. Yeah, it's just stunning. And then I invite them in that process to kind of future pace it just at the end. It's like, and how are you going to take these new understandings and dynamics out into later today, tomorrow, next week, the rest of your life? And then we have
Beautiful.
a gleeful exchange and a hug, and that's it. So it's beautiful. It's beautiful.
Beautiful. Because I was like, how does I had visualized like a breath work workshop. And I
Yeah.
was like, how do you input constellations into that? I mean, I'm always conscious of the breath. I'm always conscious of the seeker or the client, and they're sitting there and they're holding their breath, or the
Yeah.
whole field, everybody who's witnessing it
Yes.
nobody's breathing much. They're all really
Yes.
shallow breathing. And I was just like, hold on, everybody take a breath.
Good. Beautiful.
And it
Yeah.
clears starts to move the space. It's so
Yes. Otherwise, everybody's in that
fundamental.
trance. And when you think
Mm.
about it, when you limit your breathing, my lighting's not really great at the moment. When you limit your breathing, you really go in. It supports a trance-like state. of keeping something contained and held. And especially when emotions come up, I really support people just relax the jaw and maybe just do some breathing in and out through your mouth. Or if there's a little too much, then it's about, okay, so then maybe closing the mouth and breathing in and out through the nose, a little more integration. There's just so many powerful ways of working with it. But I couldn't not work with both.
Yeah.
I've found so much freedom, so much profound freedom through conscious connected breathing. And I did trainings in that. I used to combine trainings in family constellations and breath work for nearly 20 years. So it's still my deepest passion. And when I've got stuff coming up and I'm feeling a bit flat and low, I'll do a little constellation perhaps for myself, but then I'll book in with a colleague and say, okay, I need to do breath. Or I'll just throw myself on my divan. I'll just go, yeah, I'm feeling a bit flat. I'm not sure what's happened. It's probably a whole bunch of stuff that I've just shoved down in my busyness. So I just put some fabulous music on. The Mission is outstanding for that. And it's great, the sort of the visuals of that movie, if you've ever seen it. But I just lie down, put that on really loud, and then just start breathing.
The Mission.
Yeah, The Mission, Enrico Mancini. The movie is about these monks, and they're climbing up one section. They're climbing. It's always in my mind. They're climbing up this have to escape persecutors or something, and they're climbing up this cliff face, and they're hanging onto these big bags of all these gold chalices and everything from the church and the temple, and they're climbing up, and if they hang on to these, even though they're gold chalices and that, they're going to surely die. So eventually they sort of cut them loose, and so it's a great visual. I find when I'm lying, it's like, okay, what do I have to cut loose? Even if it seems like the golden chalices, maybe they're weighing me down. So then I just put that on and make a lot of music. I do a lot of movement. And then even if I don't know what I'm letting go of with sound, and you work beautifully with sound and drumming, so I just make lots of sound and blah, 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 and then I just let it settle and then just stay with a quieter, gentler breath until I'm in a place of like, reset. Nervous system reset. Ta-da! Here I am, life. What do you need of me? What can I do with you today? What dance will we do today? And yeah, so that's how I integrate it. Yeah, it's beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. And it is beautiful, don't you find that so many people have different ways? A lot of people in IFS work with family constellations. People work with past lives, with hypnotherapy. There are so many other beautiful integrations with family constellations.
Yes, absolutely. Mixing it all together. My understanding was that IFS came from constellations.
No. So Dick Schwartz. So again, it's kind of been a way that has psychotherapy and psychology and psychiatry has worked over many years.
Yep.
And I'd have to check on that, but no. My understanding is that Dick Schwartz developed that very separately, and he doesn't mention family constellations. So there was already in family systems therapy, there was already the thread of working within. Virginia Satir, if anything, is one of the early founders. But many therapeutic models worked with internal parts. Dick Schwartz really focused in on it and named and gave names and sort of roles to the specific parts and how they interacted, firefighters and protectors and so forth. I've always worked with what I call internal family systems. It's also part of NLP training as well. But the sort of labeling and rolling in IFS, I get a bit tangled in. The same with NLP. It's all very heady in my experience, and it's why I love family constellations. It's why I love breath work. That's why I love those that are less restricted to a specific model. That there's freedom and spaciousness around, and there's not a strict formula that you follow. I'm never good at that. Yeah.
Do you have any examples that you would feel free to share?
Examples of miraculous transformations.
Well, things that have just blown you away that you've witnessed in the field, obviously keeping the confidentiality and things that you might feel, if you were to write a book, that you would feel comfortable sharing. So
many instances of people feeling like the only option was, I do a lot of couples therapy, the only option was to leave the relationship that then transforms. So many couples, especially in step parenting situations, that feel a bit hopeless and helpless around the dynamic because they don't know how to work with previous partners and children from other marriages and how to integrate them. and systemic constellations is really potent at that. So
So
transforming
that's a really
family
good one. That's a
systems.
really good one for the listeners. So
Oh,
you-
yeah.
just a
Huge.
little explain briefly for those,
Many people who have step families. Yeah.
yeah, the blended families. So
Yeah. Blended
and
families.
where that comes in the process, and
Yes.
where you belong in that, and
Yes. Beautiful.
um, hmm,
Beautiful. Because that was really important for me too. When I was really young, I was 23, when I married a husband who had a previous wife and two gorgeous children. And I had no idea how to integrate that, and so my natural inclination was with regards to the mother. I loved the children, but I had this real sense of, like, let's block her energetically, which I think is a very natural thing. I've had so many clients come over the years who like, oh, the mother of, I love the kids and but the mother and so what I have come to what I came to in my own process was the absolute vital importance of who the mother of these children was, that I couldn't truly love these children and give them
including
best
her.
care
Yeah.
without including her. And
Yeah.
of course, I came to realize that the angst that my husband at the time had towards her, she had the same angst towards him, and that might have been the case, but that was their individual style. And I was grateful to her because, him going through whatever they went through together had him show up in my life as a better person, because he'd learned from that. But more importantly, much more importantly, about all the feelings and that, the conscious or unconscious desire to wish that they weren't. I can't tell you how many people it's like, I wish my husband didn't have this previous family, or I wish that this person wasn't in my life. And I often have them say, well, set that up and now stand there and wish that that wasn't the case. And just ask yourself, how long do you need to wish that that was not the case in order that it's not? And they go, because the mind, where does the mind go? It's like they realize, well, no amount of wishing. Sometimes they say, oh, 2 years forever. It's like, well, are you really wanting to use that life force energy towards wishing this were not so? And even if you do, it's not going to make any difference. It still is. So
Sure
that's a
is.
huge thing.
It came before you, so it's there and it's
That's it.
part of the system.
That's it. And really having them realize how much life force energy is going into wishing it were not so. And that applies in step and blended families as it does to lots of things. But I think it's very valuable for people to get in blended families, Tracy, because, and beautifully, as you would know too, in Brazil, systemic constellations is integrated in the court system, that if people are
Yes.
going, if couples are going for divorce, they have to have done a constellation in order to understand how best to support the children. So that's been a beautiful thing. I've really loved in couples work, really helping blended families find a new way forward where
Gosh,
they welcome.
imagine what the society would be like if we all, if everybody had to do that in ways of, yeah, okay, so there's a couple that are separated and you're still the father, you'll always be the father.
Mm,
I have a new partner, he's now here, but blah, blah,
yeah.
blah. But imagine how different the world would be if we were able to see it from a different lens.
I love that you say that. I actually think why I'm so passionate about finding the greatest point of leverage to get family constellation principles out there are for those exact reasons, Tracy. And in my wedding vows, my husband and I included acknowledging previous partners, and importantly acknowledge that, I come with my children, or I acknowledge that you come with your children, and there will be times when they need to come first above me, and I accept
Oh,
that. I know, and it's like, oh,
um,
it's so valuable. Yeah, and it's like, yeah, and we both, my husband and I, appreciate that, and they're all grown now, of course, so it's age appropriate. But there are still times that they came first, and their needs and our need to support them comes not at the expense of the current relationship, but the relationship supports that that's something that needs to happen. I find that such a valuable. I think there'd be so much less divorce in second marriages if those principles were understood and that were taken into, and everybody was acknowledged and accepted, and place found for them. And that can be challenging when the previous partners are not, harmonious, that are troublesome, but there's still ways of working with that. And I think the more we can look at what's best practice, and I think the principles of family constant, who came first, needs to be honoured and accepted. that we have more peace in our heart and soul when we accept what is, and then bring all of our creative life force energy present to deal with the challenges of
That's
what is or what's showing up. And that for me is my deepest passion with constellations and even with breathwork. Anything that clears our suppressed and unresolved traumas from the past, in order that instead of having suppressed so much of our response from past events, we feel like we're drowning or beside ourselves, all terms that we use.
mm,
Every session, every constellation, every breathwork session for me, it's clearing that in order that then we've got all of this internal spaciousness and resources, because we've gotten stronger and stronger every time we've learned to deal with something, in order to meet life with our most creative response. That for me is the whole purpose of the work. Life will keep happening. We have very little control over stuff. World events, we can't change what's happening on the planet right now specifically, but we can bring about some change. We can contribute to our immediate environment. We can be a gift to the world by clearing our own unresolved, our own angst and conflict, in order that.
absolutely. Because, those COVID brought up a lot for people, didn't it? Like there was a lot of fear that came up during that time.
Huge.
That some of it was not, I think some of it was ancestral. There was quite a bit of stuff. I did some work with
Yeah.
a person once who was going back to her home country during a time when I think the pandemic had been going for quite some time, but we were free to start moving around. And she had so much fear around traveling. And in the constellation, there was a connection to the Spanish flu that had wiped out just about most of her nation,
Yes.
where she originated from. And once we included it into the constellation, her system, her ancestors softened. Like there was space to breathe. The terror, there was so much, even in the thought of going back to her people who she hadn't seen for many years, and had planned to kind of be going at the beginning of when the pandemic started. So add another couple of years on. Yeah, so constellations allowing her to
Access that.
release that from herself as well.
Yes.
That
Yeah.
that trapped trauma from the ancestors of the.
And we talk about that. We talk about that, the ancestors, because science and epigenetics has shown how
Mm,
valid that is. Because for some people that can seem woo-woo, but of course, what we know now through epigenetics is that it is passed in our DNA. And the truth of the matter is the human psyche is a multi-generational phenomenon. That's
absolutely.
who we are. So again, even coming back to your first question, it's like, who am I? I'm a multi-generational a being who, when I can think of myself, I come from this long line of men and women who met life to the best of their ability and passed on to me a whole bunch of unresolved trauma and grief and a whole bunch of resources and resourcefulness. And the
Mm,
more I sort of let go and leave behind me that which does not serve me, life, and the current situation, and take forward really ongoingly develop. I mean, we're all in training to be good ancestors. So already a
absolutely.
grandmother, I hope to contribute to the next 7 generations.
Yeah.
And the more I clear up in this generation, the more I contribute. Actually, just one thing on that, Trace, I often found over 30 years that people would say, I'll do anything for my children. Then I have to say, if you really want to do something for your children and your grandchildren and your great-grandchildren, clear up. Put the time and energy into clearing up what's unresolved within you.
Yeah.
Give it the time and energy that it deserves so that you are your most resourced self. You're living your most optimal creative life. And that's the best thing that you can do for your children,
Mm,
without exception.
yeah, totally.
Just a footnote.
This is my legacy. I'm just wiping the slate of
That's
my
it.
own odd stuff, right?
That's it.
Um, because you're from such a large family, you have a larger amount of siblings than the majority of us. Have you noticed, because I noticed this in my own family system, have you noticed that when you do work and that there's the ripple? We talk about constellations and how it flows forward and then you're freeing from the back and then there's that ripple effect within your system. Has there been times when you've gone
Sure, no
really
question.
shifted?
Yeah, I think there's no question the more work that I've done in understanding family systems, that I've been a better sibling. I've been a better older sister, a better younger sister, because I used to always say, I'm the eldest girl in a family of 9, which kind of like left out my brother. And I always used to tell the story that he abdicated first position anyway, which being a boy was kind of like I was counted on. He's not with us anymore. He died of cancer about 4 years ago. Beautiful, 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 beautiful human being, and has 3 of the most glorious children, and mother of those children. It's improved all my relationships, Tracy. And yeah, of course, the more I think in my early days, because I got the responsibility from my mother to help out so much, I think there was a part of me in the early days that felt like it was probably a bit bossy towards them, like, oh, I don't know. It changed. I learned not to be that, and that wasn't who I was. And it's just ongoingly been valuable in the conversations that we've had over the years,
Yeah.
and for us all to integrate the principles of acknowledging past relationships, of making peace with, our parents. There was a lot of stuff happened, a lot of trauma happened growing up in that family with so many children, and ultimately an alcoholic father, and just the proximity of so many relationships, like it was huge. Yeah, we've all benefited from all. So most of my siblings have done a considerable amount of work. I've got two beautiful sisters that are social workers, and another sister who's done family constellation training ad infinitum and anthroposophical counselling. Yeah, they've all got one of my other sisters who's a golden gem, works in aged care, and another in juvenile detention centre. So we've all, I think, as a consequence of the good that we did get from our parents, which was a
Yeah.
lot, especially from our mother, who's now 94, knocking on death's door, but it's not opening for her.
She's amazing too.
She's
Like I
ringing the
can see
bell.
those genes flowing through you.
Yeah, she's
She's
ringing the bell, but
she's
it's because she
amazing.
has chronic pain. But other than that, she lives. So I think we're grateful that we've all got really, kindness has been a really strong resource that's come down through us. I recently went to visit too my namesake. My name's Jonine Kathleen Lee, and then Gabay. And my namesake is a Kathleen Lee, who's a Good Samaritan nun. She's now 97 and in a retirement home. And she's been a really great source of spiritual strength for me, because even though she was in the Catholic order, her beliefs go beyond that, and the importance of honouring each individual's sovereignty and dignity, and the absolute essential need for compassion and contributing to a more peaceful world is certainly part of her mantra. And I think very often people say, what do you do? What's your job? And I say, well, I'm contributing to world peace. I'm a peacemaker. And I think that's true. Every constellation, every breath session is a contribution to world peace.
Well, it
So I
is,
think
isn't
we're
it?
all
The more
peacemakers.
peace we find in ourselves,
Peace in the world begins in the heart and
exactly,
soul of the individual. That's the gig.
exactly.
Yeah.
A-
Gandhi.
as you were sharing that about your family, I was thinking my first husband grew up the ninth of 9, but he was actually he was the 10th of 9 of, because there was one that died just before him, but the family didn't, there was no dynamics. But anyway, it gives me and it has for a long time, it's given me a much deeper appreciation for
He lived
what he
through.
must have experienced in his
Yeah.
family, being the
Especially being the
youngest of
nun.
such a large family. And
Yeah.
yeah, and so
I
I
thought
look at my children and see that side of them. I have much more compassion and understanding. We were both pretty young. We were very young when we got together, and
And are your children from him? Are they
my first two,
first two?
my
And
two
have you
daughters
you've
are.
got third,
I've
yeah.
got 3, and then I remarried 7 or 8 years later, and then had a boy. Yeah.
And of course you would have appreciated too in your own relationship and being able to pass on to your children, because your first two children are considerably older. And
Yes.
so your parenting, just the way you held yourself as a parent, as a mother, as a wife,
Completely different. My boy
so different. I
has a
know.
completely different mother to
Yeah.
the girls, and they're we're finding ourselves in that as the girls, as things have gotten on. But just from the whole, everything about my parenting was completely different. I had already started some very big processes when I got pregnant with Ben. So
Yeah, I'm grateful for nearly 16 years of doing inner child work that helped me and heal my, and I needed every single one. I kept thinking, oh, one of these days I'm going to get tired of running these 4-day living workshops that are really intense and incorporate breathwork and inner child and family constellations. And I never did because I think I needed every single one of those intense. But
I've been
in
doing
my
it
end was,
in a child and creating a piece of art from that. You know, it's so important. The inner child needs that love,
you
that
just broke
connection.
up there, Tracy.
I've been running some inner child workshops where you create a piece of artwork with a picture of yourself, and then you create
Beautiful.
and you're giving that child the love that you didn't receive, right? You're able to really, we call it nurture, support, love, give it everything, and create a beautiful image of yourself. And over a few days, and the transformation, and also in between it is a constellations happening throughout it as well.
Yeah,
Just transformative,
yeah.
and it's so powerful, right? If we're walking around
Still
with an
touches
inner
me,
child
Tracy.
driving the bus, we're all over the lanes,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
we're stopping and starting,
yeah.
and yeah.
No question. And that work, that foundational primary work is absolutely pivotal. I give absolute credence to, the energy that I have in my life because that I have the profound connection with that child part. I mean, it's just an ongoing dialogue to the point where it's like, and the self-talk in all the workshops, because that's the internal dialogue. That interpersonal relationship with parents is important, but then how we've interpreted it and then how we translate that into an intrapersonal relationship,
Mm.
and ensuring that whatever voices did or didn't come from those interpersonal relationships are transformed, and that we change our inner dialogue. And I often say to people, really, the work is about transforming your inner dialogue with yourself, which is really primary. And there's lots of ways to do that. If we could have our self-talk as if be projected onto a billboard, I often say, you want to be really proud. You want to work on, it's worth working on, being really proud that that's in beaming lights with flashing lights around, and you're really proud of every word that's said in there.
Mm.
And that's something
Cool.
like, oh, well, I don't know that I'd like that to do. But that's been transformative for me as part of the work, is like changing that inner dialogue. So my self-talk is that my little girl, when you talk about that, part of it's the self-talk I find in my dialogue with my little girl. If she had had that growing up, oh my goodness,
Mm.
20 years earlier or whatever, her
Yeah.
relationships would have been transformed. However, I'm really grateful. The woundedness in my family system is what drove me, what makes me, and
Yeah,
we all,
absolutely.
yes,
Now it's a resource, right? Amazing resource.
that's the resource. Yeah. And
Mm.
that's the life purpose. I didn't come to the planet to cruise along and have a cushy time. Early on, I had to go through those challenges, and it formed who I am. And I'm deeply, profoundly grateful for everything. Yeah.
Oh,
And that little girl in me is like, oh my gosh, she just loves it. She loves sparkly things, because also being one of 9, and I was the eldest, they weren't even hand-me-downs, so it'd be like one dress a year for your birthday or Christmas, or there wasn't a lot. So the little girl in me just loved sparkly things and pretty dresses.
yeah.
And early on, she had to have them in order to feel okay. And now she's free to. Free to
Mm.
be grunge and free to be whatever, but also free to not have to apologize if she wants sparkly things. Yeah.
How wonderful. How
Yeah.
wonderful. I
Thank
could
you.
talk with you for
I
ages.
know
I've
it.
realized how long we've been chatting sitting here for ages. Is there anything else that you
Yeah.
would like to share that you've come with to this conversation that you'd like to share with the audience?
So what I would say is I highly encourage anyone to find a facilitator near you, and to experience family constellations, to ideally go to a group workshop, but equally, if that's a challenge for you, to find someone online. There are amazing facilitators all over the world. Find someone, because the greatest gift you can give yourself, your children, your partner, and future generations is to make peace with what happened, with what is, and then build up the resources to be your most creative self to meet the challenges that arrive. The level to which you probably need to give attention to this, a good indicator is when a life happens, if your response to even seemingly small things is really big, if it's disproportionate to the event, then it speaks more to the past than the present. So
Yeah.
I highly recommend you get to it. Yes, definitely do that. Find a good facilitator. And there is an international organization, ISCA, which is rejigging and reforming to create more opportunities for people to be found on the website. But just Google Family Constellations and find someone around the world.
Because you've got a directory too, haven't you?
We
What?
don't have a directory at the moment on the internet, but well, we do have a directory of over 40 facilitators worldwide, and you can find that on www.constellation. I don't know if you put that in there, www.constellationintensive.com, but Google Family Constellations
Yeah.
training, facilitator training, and you can find it. But just, yeah, I just encourage anybody to experience it. Just do it one
Come
time and sort of
along,
then
come
ring
along to the
Tracy and
workshop.
I up if you didn't love it and say, oh my God, I didn't love that, but I'll bet we don't get any calls. I bet we get what happens every month after the training is like, oh my God, I'm so grateful for this work. I'm so glad I did this session. I'm so glad my family get to have a better me
Yeah,
because I take care of myself. I've given myself, I value myself. Every opportunity for self-care is an act of self-love. And I think there's nothing greater than the self-care one can give oneself to let go of what doesn't serve us going forward.
gosh, I just that I had
Yeah.
that big one in Sydney. Remember they called an ambulance for me? Um,
Oh, amazing.
because I was having chest pains and it had been happening on and off for a little while, and so there was,
And you just kind of pushed it
thought it
aside.
might have been a little bit of a heart attack or something, angina or something happening, and because I was not taking care of myself, I was pushing down my self-care.
Yeah.
Turns out that my body was so anemic that and you need the iron with the blood and to the oxygen and da 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 da. But I
Yeah.
had to take an ambulance ride in Sydney for me to go, okay, Tracy, take a really good look at yourself. It was a really big turning point.
A
Um,
gift. Yeah. Yeah.
it was a gift. And
Yeah.
I also had the gift that the next day in Gala, Robel did a constellation for me, not based on that. It was something completely different, but it was linked to, it ended up being showing me a really huge link to it. So you're absolutely right. The self-care is so important, right?
And if we use the breath to keep tuning into, 5 or 10 minutes in the morning, just take a few minutes, you roll over in bed and talk about the inner child, just take a few breaths and check in with that younger part of you. What do you want and need today? Because we're always in repair of that. How can I take care of that in a healthy way? And the more we strengthen that intrapersonal relationship, we listen to the early signals. Tracy, don't you get? I mean, they
Oh,
don't
I
have
do
to get
now.
critic and they don't have to get loud and screaming at us. You will take care of yourself.
Yes. They're no longer yelling at me. They're just like,
No, the heart go kaboom, kaboom. Please wake up. I know. God love us. But anyway, we're all doing the best we can. And I
yeah,
think that we all can, a community is so valuable in contributing to each other to keep each other out of the trance of, I don't matter, or I'm worthless, or I'm not enough. And encouragement and inspiration is really important for us all.
absolutely.
So, what a blessing to hang out and have this time. So, I hope everybody else enjoyed it because Tracy and I have had a blast, which I knew we would. But we probably do have to go for now.
Yes.
But I know that I'll have a great opportunity ongoingly to hang out with
And
you, Tracy. And you're a blessing too. Look what you've done since your heart bursting and telling you to wake up, and you're awake and wide and creating a stunning community in New Zealand and doing all these amazing things. So
well, I have wonderful
long
people
may
like you
we
inspiring me as well. So I'm
long
really
may we
grateful for
stay
that.
awake.
Mm. Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Thanks,
So
Tracy.
grateful for you for taking the time, for being here and sharing so much juiciness and wisdom with the
Thanks,
listeners.
everyone. Watch your self-talk. Make sure you're speaking to yourself truly, like you truly, lovingly, madly adore everything about yourself, even though you're completely and utterly imperfect. You're your perfect version of you. Bless. Thanks, Tracy.
Thank you for listening. Head over to Instagram and tell me what's resonated for you with this episode. You'll find me at tracy.cartwright. That's Tracy with no E. tracy.cartwright, or head over to my website, tracycartwright.co.nz, and receive a free audio with the gift from your ancestors. So until next time, be kind to yourself and have fun doing it.